Welcome to the Prime for ADHD podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Toole, ADHD coach and educator for women with ADHD who look like they've got it together, but feel like they're falling apart. Inside this podcast, I'm sharing all my best, simple, brain-friendly strategies and insights that have helped women, especially those in midlife, better understand the way their ADHD exists in this stage of life so they can get their shit together or keep it together. Whether you're a woman with ADHD or care about one, you'll walk away with new insights. If you're a capable woman with ADHD who's done using ADHD as an excuse and done living with how hard it feels, you're in the right place. Get ready for a new kind of existence. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Prime for ADHD podcast. This is season 2, episode 8, and I'm so excited for this episode. It gets personal and intimate. When ADHD is understood in midlife, something interesting happens in relationships. Patterns that were once interpreted as personality flaws, carelessness, selfishness, immaturity, overreacting, they start to look different. Not excused, not erased, but understood. And understanding changes what you do next. This episode is about that shift. Last week, we talked about disclosure. Today, we're looking at what happens after that disclosure, how it changes the dynamics between you and the people in your life. Understanding your ADHD, or the ADHD of someone you love, does not automatically fix a relationship, but it does change the perspective. And once the perspective changes, you can renegotiate rather than repeat the same misunderstandings. So today we're going to look at 3 types of relationships. We're going to look at the romantic partnerships, we're going to look at friendships, and we're going to look at family dynamics. And each of these could probably be its own episode, but I am going to do my best to explain them all in one. Let's start with romantic relationships. While estimates vary, some studies suggest that the divorce rate for couples affected by ADHD may be as much as twice that of the general population. And that's not just me interpreting the numbers. That's almost word for word what I read in an Attitude magazine article that I'll link to in the show notes. Contributors include financial stress, emotional stress, communication problems, intimacy issues, family conflicts, and legal troubles. These can result from ADHD qualities such as inattention, impulsivity, forgetfulness, disorganization, mood swings, anger, and that's just to name a few. In long-term relationships, these ADHD patterns can often look like character problems. Examples of ADHD qualities that affect relationships include messiness, missed dates such as birthdays, anniversaries, appointments, etc., inconsistent follow-through, failure to pay bills on time. Finances are always a big one in a relationship. Emotional intensity, hyperfocus that excludes the partner, issues with physical intimacy. From the outside, these look like laziness, lack of care, avoidance, selfishness. But the mechanics underneath, they're different. A neurotypical partner leaving a mess might signal disregard, while an ADHD partner leaving a mess might signal object permanence issues, task switching overload, or a nervous system that triages differently. Or maybe they are just freaking exhausted. The behavior looks identical, but the cause is not. And if you treat the ADHD pattern like a character flaw, the solution becomes, oh, try harder, be more responsible, care more, and just do it. I hate that one. Although I also use it because sometimes you gotta step up and just do it. And these don't work, or they don't work all the time. And it's not that the person doesn't care, it's that there's executive functioning issues. One way that executive functioning issues show up is in forgetfulness. Forgetting important dates, forgetting to pay the bills, forgetting to sign school forms, and those are just a few. And so let's take forgetting important dates as an example. A neurotypical person forgetting an anniversary, that might mean it wasn't prioritized, it wasn't tracked, it wasn't considered meaningful. Now an ADHD partner forgetting might mean time blindness. Weak perspective memory, which is the form of memory that enables a person to recall an intention to do something. Overload or overwhelm. Distraction. And yeah, it might be all of those ADHD qualities, but the forgetfulness still hurts. Just because you forgot because you have ADHD still hurts. And there, the solution, it's not guilt. It's never guilt. It's structure. If couples don't understand that distinction, resentment builds around the wrong story. She doesn't care. He doesn't value me. I'm always last, etc. And that is when the dynamic hardens or fossilizes. And midlife makes all of this sharper. Think Han Solo and Carbonite, Encino Man. It's all those resentments, they harden. Because by now, the coping strategies are exhausted. The roles are entrenched. That's an important one. The resentments, also really important. The resentments have history. And if ADHD is newly understood, there is a new perspective. That new perspective can make you realize that you've been trying to solve the wrong problem. This is also why, in some cases, a marriage counselor with ADHD experience matters. ADHD marriage problems are not identical to neurotypical marriage problems, even if they look the same. They could look the same from a distance, but they are not solved the same way. If the intervention is communicate better, be more empathetic, compromise, you might still be addressing symptoms rather than the structure. So if I'm talking about ADHD in relationships, I need to talk about sex and intimacy because ADHD shows up there significantly. ADHD can show up in intimacy as desire that fluctuates wildly, hyperfocus on sex for a period of time and then abrupt drop-off, distraction during intimacy, rejection sensitivity, and so much more. And again, this can be interpreted as loss of attraction, lack of commitment, emotional withdrawal. But sometimes it's dopamine variability. Sensory sensitivity, such as the smell or the taste of someone or physical touch. Novelty seeking, exhaustion, and if you have ADHD, you might have had a visceral reaction to something I just said. Understanding all of this changes the tone of the conversation. Instead of asking the question of, oh, why don't you want me? And please never ask that. The question becomes, what would help your nervous system? And that's a completely different conversation. And on the topic of sex and intimacy, the ADHD brain seeks dopamine-driven stimulation, and that need for stimulation can lead to high-risk choices like infidelity. Some studies estimate significantly higher rates of infidelity in adults with ADHD compared to the general population. It's not inevitable at all. It's not a character trait. It's a risk factor when stimulation seeking goes unmanaged. I'm not saying it happens in all or whatever relationships, but it's a risk. People with ADHD are more drawn to novelty. They're easily distracted or seek distraction. They can struggle with executive functions like impulse control, behavioral inhibition, and the consideration of longer-term consequences in the presence of something highly engaging like an affair partner. This is why understanding ADHD, every part of it, is so important. And it's another reason that seeing a marriage counselor with ADHD experience can be more helpful than a therapist without that expertise. So I'll pause here for a moment, let all that sink in. Okay, so I just gave you a lot, and maybe that's all you're here for, but we're going to now discuss friendships. Friendships in midlife, they're quieter, but just as revealing. Some of the qualities of ADHD that show up in romantic relationships, such as time blindness, object permanence, will show up in friendships. A relationship is a relationship is a relationship. To understand this, imagine the ADHD brain as a high-performance engine that lacks a predictable regulator. It can surge with brilliant intensity one moment and stall unexpectedly the next. In the context of midlife, ADHD in friendships can look like inconsistent texting or disappearing where months pass between contacts, canceling plans or chronic lateness due to time blindness, intense connection followed by sudden silence, often triggered by friendship burnout once the initial novelty of a connection fades, forgetting to follow up, being too much, or disappearing entirely. And friends might interpret these behaviors as flakiness or lack of investment, but it's really not. It does not mean that your ADHD friend doesn't care or doesn't love you. It's important to understand that out of sight often means out of working memory, not out of heart. If a friend isn't directly in front of an ADHD adult, their brain may simply fail to generate the pulse to reach out despite that deep caring. And maybe we think about you and think, oh, I should reach out, and immediately forget. Like, that happens to me all the time. I think of someone and then it's gone. And a significant but often hidden hurdle is rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. For those with ADHD, the perception of being rejected, like a friend taking too long to text back, can trigger an overwhelming emotional pain that feels as sharp as a physical pain. And this can lead to a shame spiral, causing the individual to withdraw further to protect themselves from perceived disapproval. And the same thing can happen if it's the person with ADHD knowing they should reach out or feeling like they should, but also feeling bad that they haven't. So instead of actually reaching out to that person we want to reach out to, we get anxious, get into a shame spiral, and then that shame spiral will keep us from doing that thing that would have prevented it. So that is, rather than texting the friend, we're thinking about texting the friend and how bad we feel about texting the friend, and it just goes on and on and on, perpetuates itself. And someone with ADHD might think, well, it's been too long, I can't do it now. I actually read this very situation somewhere recently. I think it was in a forum where a woman wanted to text her friend who was a new mom, but she wanted to say the perfect thing. And that led to procrastination and then shame. And when the woman eventually texted her friend was understanding and said, she's experienced the same thing, it's all good. Delayed texting and feeling like it might be too late. Like, she's experienced that. She totally got it. Furthermore, many adults, particularly women, have spent decades masking their symptoms, mimicking neurotypical behavior to fit in. And this takes so much energy that can lead to burnout and isolation. So when ADHD is understood, the conversation can shift from friends saying, you're unreliable, to ADHD friends saying, I need supports to help me stay consistent. Or even friends saying or asking, how can I help? So this is where the ADHD friend needs to step up and find things that work for them to help sustain relationships. And I'm talking about this in the context of friendships, but of course this can apply to other types of relationships. So using structural elements such as scheduled social admin time to answer accumulated messages, or shared calendars, Or let's say calendar alerts with the steps involved. So maybe don't just set one reminder for a friend's birthday, but instead 2 weeks before create an alert saying brainstorm gift for friend's birthday. Well, let's just say my birthday because mine's coming up in a couple weeks from the point I'm recording this. But so like 2 weeks before you might say brainstorm gift for. And then 1 week before another alert will pop up that says buy the gift for, and with the store location in your calendar's location field. Like you're basically taking a vague, overwhelming task and putting it into smaller, concrete steps. Or maybe it's just as simple as having a 1 week alert before the person's birthday, and then it popping up the day of. Although really these days everyone's on Facebook. You're seeing like when their birthday is, so just check Facebook and then DM them a happy birthday, call them, text them. But if you get my point here. It's the little steps. Or automate your attention. So like set recurring low pressure reminders to check in on your tasks app. Or you can try shorter, more frequent contact, such as like, hey, I thought of you. And like just leave it at that. Doesn't have to be a long thing. Just, hey, how's it going? Or hey, good morning, that kind of thing. And if a misunderstanding occurs, ADHD adults can use a do-over strategy. Reflect on the mistake, not ruminate, reflect, and reach out with a sincere apology that explains the ADHD pattern without using it as an excuse, and then ask for a fresh start. And you might find your friend understands more than you think, and maybe you were just worried about nothing. And ultimately, if you love someone with ADHD, understand that inconsistency is rarely indifference. Your ADHD friends often bring unique strengths, including creativity, spontaneous, charisma, a deep, non-judgmental empathy that comes from their own struggles. ADHD friends are the best, and I'm not just saying that because I am one. I'm saying that also because I have several of them. By offering patience and understanding to your ADHD friends, you allow their best qualities to shine. And that doesn't mean you don't tell them that you're upset or you're hurt. Of course, you have to. That communication should be open. But everyone needs to take responsibility, and friendship takes understanding. And then there's some friends who are like family. And I'm going to talk about family next. So, family relationships. This actually also ties into the romantic partnership section, but this is more the relational. So, family dynamics, relationships, are uniquely loaded because they are built on decades of shared history, often established before a diagnosis provides a framework for understanding behavior. When ADHD is finally identified in midlife, it can be profoundly disruptive to a family's established order, surfacing after years of accumulated frustration and misunderstood patterns. And yes, this is spouses, but it's also with your siblings, with your parents, etc., and with your kids. Family members who saw your childhood struggles or have been impacted by your symptoms may react with skepticism. They might make comments such as, "You were always like this," or "Why are you labeling everything now?" Or, "Oh, that's just an excuse," etc. Insert your own. It's important to remember that these reactions often stem from a fundamental misconception that ADHD is a set of personality traits or character flaws, rather than a neurodivergence that affects how the brain functions. The ADHD brain looks different. It's a brain health issue. It's a mental health issue. And each person with ADHD is different. It affects people in different intensities, in different parts of the times in their life. So you got to remember all that. From the outside, traits like forgetfulness or impulsivity are frequently misinterpreted as intentional neglect or lack of caring, leading to years of built-up resentment. When a family says, that's just an excuse, they might be confusing a brain-based explanation for an attempt to avoid responsibility. A midlife diagnosis? Now, a midlife diagnosis can happen after the mask slips. To your family, the diagnosis seems new, but for you, it's the end of a lifelong, exhausting performance. The most transformative part of this realization is the sudden reevaluation of childhood narratives. For example, you see why you were always late with your homework, you see where the procrastination was, you see why your room was messy, etc. You're not rewriting history to assign blame. You are rewriting the interpretation of your own life so that you can move forward with peace of mind. What was once incorrectly labeled in unflattering terms is reframed through a compassionate lens as a genuine struggle with executive function, attention, and working memory. And that distinction matters. Now, I want to touch on the parent-child dynamic just a little bit. And I've seen this a lot. In general, people are often attracted to partners who remind them of one of their parents. In an ADHD relationship, that dynamic often plays out. Many families find themselves in a situation where the non-ADHD members becomes the parental figure, managing logistics, the cooking, the running the household, the making the appointments, and so forth. Maybe they're even making the appointments for the ADHD partner. The ADHD individual might feel bossed around, shamed, or incompetent, or they might not, but maybe they do. Let's say they do. If it does go sour, there tends to be a destructive cycle where the ADHD person may underfunction and retreat, while the other becomes resentful and critical. So one retreats, and because the other's retreating, the other one says, they're not doing whatever they're supposed to do. That makes them more resentful, more critical, and you see how the cycle perpetuates itself. And when people with ADHD are parents, there's the parent-child bond. When an ADHD adult becomes a parent, ADHD can make it difficult to be consistently present for a child's emotional needs. And for parents whose children are already adults when the midlife diagnosis happens, that diagnosis can be a light bulb moment. Again, a sudden reevaluation of narratives, of how they parented all those years. So, in families, moving forward requires shifting from blame to collaborative problem solving. You're both battling ADHD, not each other. And that's an important distinction, and it's important for keeping the peace. So this type of discussion could involve I statements, I sentences to express feelings without triggering defensiveness, and always, and this is just in partnership dynamics, never use words, absolutes like always or never, which can shut down productive dialogue. You don't say, you always this, you never this. Ultimately, the goal is to allow your loved ones to see the world through the perspective of your brain, creating a foundation for connection, understanding, and patience. And because it's a dialogue, you each make your I statements. So that was a lot. And now I want to discuss the pattern beneath all of it. Because whether with romantic partners, or friends, or family, there is a pattern beneath it all. Most long-standing conflicts in ADHD relationships aren't about love. They're about incorrect perceptions and assumptions. When assumptions are wrong, the emotional reaction is too. If I think you forgot because you don't care, I respond one way. If I understand that you forgot because your working memory is precarious under stress, I respond another. Do you see the difference? The behavior might still need adjusting, but the meaning attached to it changes. Meaning drives tone, tone drives outcomes. I will say that again. Meaning drives tone. Tone drives outcomes. Now, I want to talk about what changes once you understand. Understanding ADHD in relationships does 3 things. 1, it reduces unnecessary moral judgment. 2, it highlights where structure is needed instead of shame. 3, it opens the door to new discussion, and that is a beautiful thing. Now, not everyone takes that door. Some partners refuse to adjust, some friendships fade, some family members resist new language. And sometimes ending a marriage or a friendship has to be done. Understanding ADHD does not guarantee harmony, but it gives you better information, and better information allows better decisions. And now, we are getting to the end of this episode. If you are listening to this and you can see one dynamic clearly, one recurring argument, one pattern that keeps repeating, this is exactly the kind of thing we map out in my new Stop Making It Harder session. It's one focused 60-minute session. We will identify the one place you are pushing in the wrong direction. And we will define one shift that makes the rest easier. Not therapy, not venting, not relationship advice, strategic recalibration. I am opening 5 of these spots this month. If you're interested, email hello@andreatoolcoach.com with the subject line, Stop Making It Harder. And I'll send you the next steps. The email address is also in the show notes. If this episode resonated, follow or subscribe to Primed for ADHD wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's next. In the next episode, we'll continue looking at relationship dynamics, especially where power and disclosure intersect in professional and social spaces. If you found this helpful, leave a rating and review. And if you know someone navigating ADHD in midlife who might see themselves in this conversation, share this episode with them. If you think it would be useful to a non-ADHD person in your life, share it with them. Thanks for listening. I'll metaphorically see you next time. And remember, I've got you.